Everyone laughed when a bankrupt millionaire adopted a homeless little girl. Then he found out she was the heir to a $1 billion empire. Just before the story starts, wherever you are on your journey, consider this your sign to keep going. The rain pounded the Manhattan streets like it had a personal vendetta against the city. Alexander Alex Donovan pulled his once expensive coat tighter around his shoulders, painfully aware of the fraying cuffs and the hole in the left pocket. 6 months ago, he wouldn't have noticed the rain at all from inside his chauffeured Bentley. 6 months ago, he had been one of New York's golden boys, 32 years old, with a net worth of $70 million. Now, he was just another failed entrepreneur with nothing but a nearly empty bank account and an apartment he couldn't afford next month's rent on. When Harrison and Blackwell crashes, it'll take everyone with it. His financial advisor had warned him, "Don't put everything there, Alex." But Alex hadn't listened. He'd been so certain, so arrogant. Now every penny, every investment, every asset was gone, swallowed by the spectacular collapse of what had seemed like the surest bet on Wall Street. A car sped by, splashing dirty water across his Italian leather shoes, another relic from his former life. Alex didn't even flinch. What did it matter? Nothing mattered anymore. That's when he heard it. A small, stifled sob coming from the narrow alley between an upscale restaurant and a boutique whose windows displayed dresses that cost more than his current net worth. He should have kept walking. Whatever tragedy was unfolding in that alley wasn't his problem. He had enough of his own, but something made him stop, turn, and peer into the darkness. Huddled against the wall, partially sheltered by a soggy cardboard box, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with tangled dark hair plastered to her pale face by the rain. Her clothes, a dirty t-shirt and jeans, were soaked through, and she hugged her knees to her chest, shivering violently. "Hey," Alex said softly, taking a step into the alley. "Are you okay?" The girl's head snapped up, and Alex found himself staring into the most startling green eyes he'd ever seen. They were alert, intelligent, and filled with a wariness no child should possess. "Go away," she said, her voice surprisingly strong despite her trembling body. "I don't need help." Alex crouched down, keeping a respectful distance. "It's freezing and pouring rain. Everyone needs help sometimes." "Not from strangers," she retorted, eyeing him suspiciously. "I'm Alex," he said, offering a gentle smile. "Now, I'm not a stranger anymore." The girl didn't return the smile. "That's not how it works." "You're right," Alex nodded seriously. "Smart girl. Do you have somewhere to go? Parents? Anyone I can call?" Something flickered across her face, pain, quickly masked. "No, nobody." Alex hesitated. The responsible thing would be to call social services, but something in those fierce green eyes made him pause. He'd been on the receiving end of enough pity in recent months to recognize the pride in her gaze. "I'm going to get some food," he said, gesturing to the restaurant next door. "If you're still here when I come out, maybe you'd like some too." The girl didn't respond, but she didn't run either. 20 minutes later, Alex emerged with a paper bag containing a cheeseburger, fries, and a hot chocolate. The girl was still there, though she'd retreated further into her cardboard shelter. "Here," he said, setting the bag down and stepping back. "It's getting colder tonight. The forecast says it might drop below freezing." The girl stared at the bag, then at Alex, suspicion warring with hunger on her small face. "What's your name?" Alex asked. A long silence stretched between them, punctuated by the drumming of rain. "Lily," she finally whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. "Nice to meet you, Lily." Alex hesitated, then made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "I have a couch. It's not much, but it's dry and warm, just for tonight until we figure something out." Lily's hand moved to her neck, clutching something beneath her shirt, a gesture Alex would soon come to recognize. Her eyes, wise beyond their years, studied him with an intensity that made him feel transparent. "Why?" she asked simply. It was a fair question. One Alex wasn't sure he could answer. Why was he, a man who'd lost everything, offering help to a street kid? Maybe because when you've fallen from the height he had, you gain perspective on what truly matters. "Because," he said finally, "everyone deserves a second chance." Lily's fingers tightened around whatever hung from her neck, a necklace or pendant of some kind. Her gaze never leaving his face, she slowly reached for the paper bag with her free hand. "Just for tonight," she agreed warily. Neither of them knew it then. But that pendant hidden beneath Lily's shirt, an ornate silver key with a distinctive emblem, was about to unlock a mystery that would reshape both their destinies. And the emblem? It belonged to one of the wealthiest, most secretive families in America, a family that had been searching for their missing heir for 3 long years. Just before the story starts, wherever you are on your journey, consider this your sign to keep going. Alex's apartment was a painful reminder of how far he had fallen. The living room still housed his designer furniture, the last remnants of his former life that he couldn't bear to part with yet. But the bar cart was empty, the artwork sold, and the fridge contained nothing but leftover Chinese food and half a carton of milk. "It's not much right now," Alex said as he flipped on the lights, suddenly self-conscious about the stack of unpaid bills on the coffee table. Lily stood rigidly by the door, her small backpack clutched to her chest. Green eyes darting around the room as if mapping escape routes. "Bathroom's down the hall if you want to clean up," Alex offered. "I can find you something dry to wear." Lily's gaze settled on him, that unnerving, analytical stare that made Alex feel like she was reading his soul. "Why are you helping me?" Alex sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. "Honestly, I don't know. Maybe because nobody helped me when Harrison and Blackwell went under." "Harrison and Blackwell?" Something flickered across Lily's face. "Recognition?" "Yeah, investment firm. Huge scandal. You wouldn't have heard of it." "I might have," Lily said quietly, then quickly changed the subject. "I can sleep on the floor. The couch is all yours. I'll get you some towels." When Alex returned with towels and a t-shirt that would swallow her small frame, Lily had placed her backpack carefully on the floor and was examining a framed photo on the mantel. "Is this your family?" she asked, pointing to the image of Alex with an older couple. "My parents," Alex nodded. "They're in Florida now, retired before everything happened." "They don't know you lost everything?" Lily's bluntness was startling. "No," Alex admitted. "They think I'm still doing great." Lily nodded, as if this made perfect sense to her. Adults lie to protect people they love. The way she said it, with such world-weary certainty, made Alex's heart ache. "Sometimes," he agreed, "but sometimes the truth is better, even when it hurts." Lily's fingers drifted to her neck, touching that hidden pendant again. "Not always," she whispered. Later, after Lily had showered and changed into his t-shirt, Alex made hot chocolate and sandwiches. He couldn't help but notice how Lily inspected the food carefully before taking small, measured bites. "Tomorrow we should talk about next steps," Alex said gently. "There are people who can help you find a proper home." Lily's face hardened. "No foster care, no orphanages. I won't go." "Lily, I had a home," she interrupted, her voice cracking slightly. "I can't go back there." "Why not?" She set down her mug, those extraordinary green eyes suddenly filled with shadows. "Because they'd kill me too." Before Alex could process this bombshell, Lily curled up on the couch, turning her back to him. The conversation was clearly over. That night, Alex lay awake in his bed, replaying Lily's words in his mind. Who was this child? What had she seen? What was she running from? Around 2 a.m., a scream pierced the darkness. Alex bolted from his bed to find Lily thrashing on the couch, caught in the grip of a nightmare. "No, "Uncle Richard, please, don't hurt them," she cried, her small body convulsing with terror. Alex gently shook her awake. "Lily, it's okay. You're safe." Her eyes flew open, wild with panic. For a moment she didn't seem to recognize him. Then she whispered a name that would change everything. "Victoria. My real name is Victoria." Lily, or Victoria, acted as if nothing had happened, refusing to acknowledge her midnight confession. She ate the cereal Alex prepared, perched on a kitchen stool with perfect posture that seemed instinctive rather than taught. "So," Alex began carefully, "about what you said last night." "I was having a nightmare," she interrupted flatly. "I say weird things when I have nightmares." Alex studied her face. Despite her youth, she was an accomplished liar, but her eyes betrayed her, flicking away when she spoke the untruth. "Okay," he said, deciding not to push. "But we still need to figure out what happens next. I have a friend who works in social services. She could—" "No." Lily's spoon clattered against the bowl. "I told you, no officials. They'll send me back." "Back where, Lily? To this uncle you mentioned?" Lily's knuckles whitened around her spoon. "I'm not talking about this." A knock at the door made them both jump. Alex approached cautiously, peering through the peephole to see Meredith Chen, his friend from college, who now worked for the city's child welfare department. "Sorry to drop by, unannounced," Meredith said when he opened the door, her eyes quickly taking in the scene. Alex in rumpled clothes, a small girl at his kitchen counter. "But you left 3 messages about a child in trouble." Lily shot Alex a look of such betrayal that he physically flinched. "It's not what you think," he told Meredith quickly. "I found her on the street last night. It was raining. I couldn't just leave her there." Meredith's professional demeanor softened slightly. "Of course not. But Alex, you can't just take in a child. There are procedures, laws." I know. That's why I called you instead of 911. Alex lowered his voice. "I think she might be running from someone dangerous." While they whispered in the entryway, Lily had silently slipped from her stool and moved to the window. She stiffened suddenly, pressing herself against the wall. "Lily? What's wrong?" Alex asked, noticing her alarm. "There's a man across the street," she whispered. "He's been watching the building." Alex and Meredith moved to the window. Below, a tall man in a dark suit stood beside a black sedan, his attention fixed on Alex's building. "Do you know him?" Meredith asked. Lily nodded, her face pale. "He works for my uncle." Meredith looked from Lily to Alex, her expression grave. "Alex, what have you gotten yourself into?" Before he could answer, Lily darted to her backpack and pulled out a crumpled newspaper clipping. She thrust it at Meredith. "This is why I can't go with you," she said, her voice trembling with urgency. The headline read, "Blackwood heiress still missing after 3 months." Below was a photo of a younger Lily in an expensive dress, her dark hair neatly styled, standing beside a stern-looking man identified as Richard Blackwood, interim CEO of Blackwood Industries. Meredith gasped. "You're Victoria Blackwood." Lily, Victoria, nodded, her hand going to the pendant beneath her shirt. "And if you try to take me to the authorities, my uncle will find me, and then I'll disappear for good." "We need to be smart about this," Meredith said, drawing the curtains closed. "If you really are Victoria Blackwood, there are proper channels. The proper channels all lead back to my uncle." Victoria insisted. "He has judges and police officers in his pocket." Alex's mind was reeling. The Blackwoods weren't just wealthy, they were American royalty. Old money, vast holdings, political connections. Harrison and Blackwell had managed some of their European investments before the collapse. "Meredith, can you give us a day?" Alex asked. "Just 24 hours to figure this out." Meredith hesitated, her professional ethics warring with the genuine fear in Victoria's eyes. 48 hours, she finally said. "Then I have to report this, Alex, for her safety and yours." After Meredith left, Alex turned to Victoria. "You have some explaining to do." Victoria's fingers wrapped around her pendant. "My parents died in a yacht accident 3 years ago. Everyone said it was a tragic accident, but I heard Uncle Richard on the phone the night before. He said, 'After tomorrow, everything changes. No loose ends.' That doesn't necessarily mean the next day my parents were dead. And Uncle Richard became my guardian and took control of Blackwood Industries." Victoria's voice was flat, emotionless, as if she'd disconnected from the horror of her own story. "He started treating me differently, keeping me isolated. I overheard things, arguments about my trust fund, about my shares in the company. So you ran away?" Victoria nodded. "With help from one of the housekeepers. She gave me this." She pulled out the pendant, a silver key on an expensive chain. "It opens a safe deposit box. She said it contains evidence about what really happened to my parents." Before Alex could respond, his phone rang. The screen displayed a name he hadn't seen in months: Carter Wilson, his former business partner. "Alex, my man, heard you're still in the city," Carter's voice boomed, artificially cheerful. "Let's grab a drink, for old time's sake." An hour later, at a bar that had once been their regular haunt, Carter wasted no time getting to the point. "Word on the street is you've taken in a kid," he said, signaling the bartender for another round. "A little girl." Alex kept his expression neutral. "News travels fast." "It does when Richard Blackwood is offering $1 million reward for information about his missing niece." Carter leaned forward. "Is it her, Alex?" "Did you find the Blackwood girl?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Carter laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Always a bad liar. Look, I'm giving you a friendly heads up. Blackwood has people searching every block of this city. Whatever you think you're doing, you're out of your league. Why does he want her back so badly?" Alex asked, unable to help himself. Something calculating flashed in Carter's eyes. When Victoria turns 21, she inherits controlling interest in Blackwood Industries, worth about $30 billion. Until then, everything's managed by a trust overseen by her guardian, currently her dear Uncle Richard. As Alex walked home, his mind raced. He had stumbled into something far bigger and more dangerous than he'd imagined. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The girl is worth more than money. Walk away if you value your life." When he reached his apartment, Victoria was sitting cross-legged on the couch, examining the newspaper clipping. "They've found us." "Haven't they?" she asked without looking up. Alex sat beside her. "Not yet, but they're looking. Victoria, that key around your neck. What bank is the safe deposit box in?" She finally met his gaze. "First Federal on Madison Avenue." "Then we're going there tomorrow." First Federal Bank stood like a fortress of marble and glass on Madison Avenue. Alex, dressed in his last good suit, and Victoria, wearing a hastily purchased dress and coat, approached the counter with practiced confidence. "I'd like to access my safe deposit box," Alex said smoothly, presenting his ID and a story about Victoria being his niece, accompanying him on a family errand. The bank manager frowned at Victoria's key. "Sir, this box belongs to the Blackwood estate. I can't authorize access without—" "My mother is Eleanor Blackwood," Victoria interrupted, her voice suddenly taking on an imperious tone that sent chills down Alex's spine. "This is my key, given to me by my mother before her death." The manager hesitated, clearly recognizing the name. "I would need verification of your identity, miss." "Call Richard Blackwood, then," Victoria challenged, her green eyes flashing. "Tell him Victoria is here to claim what's rightfully hers. See how quickly he arrives." The manager blanched. "That won't be necessary. Please, follow me." Inside the private viewing room, Victoria's hands trembled as she inserted the key into the lock. The box contained 3 items: a USB drive, a handwritten letter, and a small recording device. "My mother's handwriting," Victoria whispered, unfolding the letter. Alex gave her privacy to read it. focusing instead on the USB drive. He plugged it into his phone, finding it contained financial records, photographs, and a video file labeled Insurance. In the video, Eleanor Blackwood, a striking woman with Victoria's green eyes, spoke directly to the camera. "If you're watching this, Richard has made his move against us. The documents on this drive prove he's been embezzling from Blackwood Industries for years. Charles and I confronted him last night. We're meeting with the board tomorrow. Victoria, if anything happens to us, do not trust Richard. The recording device contains his confession. We love you, sweetheart. Stay safe." The video ended, leaving them in stunned silence. "They didn't just have evidence of his embezzlement," Victoria said, her voice hollow as she held up the letter. "Mom writes that Uncle Richard was selling proprietary technology to foreign competitors. He would have gone to prison for treason." Alex's phone buzzed, a news alert about Richard Blackwood announcing a new technology partnership worth billions. The press conference was scheduled for tomorrow. "We need to get this to the authorities," Alex said. "The real authorities, not local police who might be in his pocket." Victoria nodded, carefully repacking the items. "The FBI. Mom mentions an agent in her letter, someone she trusted." As they left the bank, neither noticed the sleek black car pulling away from the curb, nor the photographer across the street capturing their exit. Back at the apartment, Alex contacted the FBI agent mentioned in Eleanor's letter, Special Agent Diana Reynolds. She agreed to meet them the following morning. "We did it," Alex told Victoria, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "By this time tomorrow, your uncle will be exposed, and you'll be safe." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "What happens to me then?" The question caught Alex off guard. "Well, you'll get your life back. Your inheritance." "I don't care about the money," she interrupted. "Where will I live? Who will take care of me?" The vulnerability in her question made Alex's chest tighten. Before he could answer, his phone rang. Meredith, her voice tight with panic. "Alex, there are men with badges asking questions about you and a little girl. They say they're federal agents, but something feels off. Get out of there now." Keeping pace with Alex's long strides through the back alleys of Manhattan, "Somewhere they won't look for us." Alex pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in months. 2 hours later, they sat in the living room of Jessica Hayes, Alex's ex-fiancée, who had left him when his fortune disappeared. "You have some nerve showing up here," Jessica said, arms crossed, "especially with a child in tow." "We just need one night," Alex pleaded. "We're meeting the FBI in the morning." Jessica's expression softened when she looked at Victoria. "Fine. One night. The guest room is made up." After Victoria had gone to bed, Jessica confronted Alex in the kitchen. "What have you gotten yourself into? There was a news report about Richard Blackwood's missing niece. Is that her?" Alex hesitated, then told her everything. When he finished, Jessica looked stunned. "You really believe this, child? That a man like Richard Blackwood murdered his own brother for money?" "I've seen the evidence," Alex insisted, "and I've looked into her eyes when she talks about it. She's telling the truth." Jessica studied him for a long moment. "You've changed, Alex. The man I knew 6 months ago wouldn't have risked everything for a stranger. Maybe losing everything showed me what really matters," Alex replied quietly. In the guest bedroom, Victoria lay awake, clutching the evidence to her chest. Through the thin walls, she could hear Alex defending her, believing in her. Tears slid silently down her cheeks, not of sadness, but of something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Morning brought a flurry of activity. Alex contacted Agent Reynolds to confirm their meeting at a federal building downtown. As Victoria carefully repacked the evidence, Jessica prepared breakfast, her initial frostiness melting as she watched the tender way Alex interacted with the girl. "Be careful today," Jessica told them as they prepared to leave. "Whatever happens, you've done a good thing, Alex." They were halfway to the elevator when Victoria froze. "Wait," she whispered. "I forgot the recording device. It's on the nightstand." "I'll get it," Alex said. "Wait here with Jessica." He jogged back to the apartment, found the small device, and was heading back when his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria's number. "Trap! Run!" Alex sprinted for the stairwell instead of the elevator. Through the fire exit window, he could see the street below. Jessica being forced into a black SUV, Victoria nowhere in sight. His phone rang, an unknown number. With dread, he answered. "Mr. Donovan," said a cultured voice he recognized from news broadcasts as belonging to Richard Blackwood. "I believe you have something of mine, both the evidence and my niece. If you hurt her, don't be dramatic. Victoria is family. I simply want what's best for her." The voice hardened. "The evidence, however, is another matter. Bring everything to the Blackwood Tower rooftop at noon, or your friend Jessica won't live to see dinner." The line went dead. Alex slumped against the wall, the weight of impossible choices crushing down on him. Then his phone buzzed with a text. Not from Victoria's phone this time, but a new number. "It's V, escaped. They have my phone. Meet me where you found me, hurry." "Victoria," he called softly, moving deeper into the shadows. A small figure detached itself from behind a dumpster. Victoria's face was smudged with dirt, her new dress torn at the hem, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. "They grabbed Jessica right in front of me," she said, her voice quavering slightly. "I slipped away through the service entrance when one of them got a phone call." Alex pulled her into a tight hug, surprising them both. "Thank God you're safe." "They want the evidence," Victoria said, pulling back, "and they want me." Blackwood called. "He's holding Jessica hostage, wants us at Blackwood Tower at noon." Victoria's face hardened, with a resolve no child should possess. "Then we have to split the evidence. Insurance. I'll hide the USB drive somewhere safe." "No, we're staying together," Alex insisted. "I'm not letting you out of my sight again." "You don't understand." Victoria grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "This isn't just about Jessica or me anymore. Those technology deals my uncle is announcing today, they involve selling classified security systems to foreign governments. If we don't stop him, people will die." Alex stared at her, this extraordinary child speaking of matters far beyond her years. "How do you know all this?" "I listened," Victoria said simply. "Adults think children don't understand, so they talk freely. I understand more than they realize." Rain dripped from her dark hair as she outlined her plan, a plan so audacious it might actually work. They would need help, though. Someone inside Blackwood Industries. "There's one person," Victoria said. "My father's former assistant, Margaret. She's still there and she helped me before." 20 minutes later, huddled in a coffee shop bathroom, Alex called the direct line Victoria had memorized. "Margaret Walsh," answered a clipped, professional voice. "I'm with Victoria Blackwood," Alex said without preamble. "We need your help." A sharp intake of breath. "Is she safe?" "For now, but Richard is holding someone hostage, demanding the evidence Victoria's parents collected against him." Silence stretched across the line. Then, 30 minutes, Bryant Park, northeast corner, come alone. Margaret Walsh was a severe-looking woman in her 50s, with steel-grey hair and watchful eyes that softened the moment they landed on Victoria. "You've grown," she said simply. Victoria nodded. "Did you know about what Uncle Richard did to my parents?" Margaret's face tightened. "I suspected. Your father was going to confront the board about irregularities he'd found. The next day." "The yacht accident," she shook her head. "I helped you run away because I feared for your safety. Now I know I was right." She turned to Alex, assessing him with razor-sharp focus. "You're the failed investor. Donovan, why are you helping her?" Before Alex could answer, Victoria spoke up. "Because he's a good person. The only one who saw me when I was invisible. Something in Margaret's expression shifted. What do you need me to do? Alex explained the situation. Jessica held hostage, the noon deadline, the evidence that could bring down Richard Blackwood. His security will be watching for you both, Margaret warned. Getting into Blackwood Tower won't be easy. We don't need to get in, Victoria said quietly. We need to get Richard out. Margaret's eyebrows rose. How? Victoria pulled the recording device from her pocket. By letting him hear this, just enough to make him panic. As Margaret listened to the recording, Richard Blackwood's voice coldly discussing the unfortunate accident that would befall his brother, her face paled. That cold-blooded monster, she whispered. Can you get a message to him? Alex asked. Tell him we want to meet somewhere less conspicuous, somewhere public. Margaret nodded slowly. I can do better than that. I can get you into his private elevator. She murmured as they approached the private elevator. This card gives you direct access to the executive floor. Victoria knows where to go from there. Victoria herself was already inside the building, smuggled in through the service entrance by a sympathetic kitchen worker Margaret had enlisted. The girl was waiting in a supply closet on the executive floor, ready to implement the next phase of their desperate plan. What if Richard isn't in his office? Alex asked. He will be, Margaret assured him. I've scheduled an emergency pre-press conference briefing. He never misses those. As the elevator doors closed around Alex, Margaret pressed a burner phone into his hand. I've contacted your FBI agent. She'll be here at 12:30 with a warrant. You just need to keep Richard distracted until then. Alex's stomach lurched as the elevator shot upward. Everything hinged on perfect timing and on Richard Blackwood's arrogance. The man believed he was untouchable. They were counting on it. On the executive floor, Alex slipped past the receptionist's unmanned desk. Margaret had arranged a convenient fire drill for the administrative staff and found the supply closet where Victoria waited. Ready? He whispered. Victoria nodded, clutching the recording device. Her small face was pale but determined. Room 7212. It's a small conference room next to his office. Jessica will be there with 2 of his security team. How can you be sure? It's where he always took me when he wanted to talk without his assistant overhearing, Victoria replied, a shadow crossing her face. There's a connecting door to his office. He can come and go without anyone seeing. They moved silently down the plush hallway, Victoria leading with the confidence of someone returning to familiar territory. At room 7212, Alex pressed his ear to the door. Just sit tight, lady. Boss will be here soon. A gruff male voice. This is kidnapping. Jessica's voice. Tight with fear, but defiant. Alex's heart clenched. She was alive. He checked his watch. 11:45. 15 minutes until Richard expected them on the roof. Victoria pointed to a door further down the hall, Richard's office. Following their plan, Alex knocked firmly, while Victoria remained hidden around the corner. Come in. The cultured voice from the phone call. Richard Blackwood looked exactly like his photos, distinguished, silver-haired, with cold eyes that revealed nothing. He sat behind an enormous desk, watching Alex enter with the smugness of a predator eyeing wounded prey. Mr. Donovan, you're early. His gaze flicked past Alex. And alone. Where is my dear niece? Safe, Alex replied, and she'll stay that way. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. Bold words from a man who's lost everything. Tell me, how does it feel to fall so far, so fast? Probably the same way it'll feel for you in about 45 minutes, Alex retorted, pulling out the USB drive. I have everything. The embezzlement records, the technology sales to foreign entities, and of course the recording of you planning your brother's murder. Richard's expression didn't change, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. Imaginative, but ultimately a child's fantasy. No court would accept evidence obtained by a runaway child. The FBI might disagree. Agent Reynolds was quite interested in what we found. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Richard's face. Reynolds? Diana Reynolds? Alex nodded, pressing his advantage. Eleanor's friend from college. Apparently they stayed in touch. Richard stood abruptly. Enough games. Where is Victoria? Where is the rest of this so-called evidence? Release Jessica first. Richard pressed a button on his desk. Bring Ms. Hayes to my office. What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. The door connecting to room 7012 opened, and Jessica was pushed into the room, followed by two burly security men. At the same moment, Victoria slipped in through the main door. Uncle Richard, she said, her voice steady, despite her trembling hands. It's over. These people have filled your head with terrible lies. Victoria stood her ground. Stop it. I heard you that night. I have the recording. What recording? Richard laughed, turning to his security men. You see how they've manipulated her? Victoria pressed play on the device. Richard's voice filled the room. Charles and Eleanor have become liabilities. The yacht's maintenance was overlooked as instructed. After tomorrow, I'll handle Victoria's trust fund personally. Colour drained from Richard's face. That's doctored, fake. The FBI won't think so, Alex said. And neither will the board when they see the financial records showing how you've been stealing from the company for years. Richard's mask slipped completely, revealing the cold fury beneath. Give me that device, now. Let Jessica go first, Alex insisted. Richard nodded to one of his men, who released his grip on Jessica's arm. She immediately moved to stand beside Alex. The USB drive too, Richard demanded, hand outstretched. Alex hesitated. This was the most dangerous part of their plan. If they surrendered all the evidence. It's a copy, Victoria said suddenly. The originals are with Agent Reynolds already. She's on her way here now. It was a bluff. But Richard couldn't know that. His eyes darted to the windows, calculating. You're lying, he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Check your phone, Alex suggested. Call your contacts at the FBI. Ask if Agent Reynolds requested a warrant this morning. Richard snatched his phone from the desk, fingers flying over the screen. Whatever he read, there drained the remaining colour from his face. Edwards, Morris, he barked at his security men. Get the helicopter ready, now. The men hesitated, looking between Richard and Victoria. Sir, what about the press conference? One asked. Cancelled. Move. As the men hurried out, Richard turned back to Victoria. His expression calculating. You're coming with me. No, she's not. Alex stepped in front of her protectively. Richard pulled a gun from his desk drawer. I wasn't asking. Jessica gasped. Alex pushed Victoria behind him, heart hammering. They'd anticipated many scenarios, but not this. Think, Richard, Alex said, fighting to keep his voice steady. Kidnapping at gunpoint, you'll never get away with it. I already got away with murder, Richard snarled. This is nothing. The door burst open behind them. For one heart-stopping moment, Alex thought it was the security men returning. Instead, Margaret Walsh stood there, wide-eyed at the scene before her. Richard, what are you doing? She demanded. Richard's gun wavered. Stay out of this, Margaret. It doesn't concern you. You're holding a child at gunpoint. Of course it concerns me. She stepped into the room, positioning herself beside Alex and Victoria. Charles and Eleanor trusted you. How could you betray them like this? They betrayed me, Richard shouted, his composure cracking. This company was as much mine as theirs. More. I was the one who built the government contracts, who took the risks. While Richard's attention was on Margaret, Victoria slipped the recording device to Jessica, who quietly edged toward the door. And for what? Richard continued, gesturing wildly with the gun. So Charles could take the moral high ground, refusing the defense contracts that would have tripled our value? "So that's why you killed them," Margaret said quietly. "Money." "It was business," Richard replied coldly. "Nothing personal." Victoria stepped out from behind Alex. "It was personal to me," she said, her voice breaking. "They were my parents." Something shifted in Richard's eyes. Regret, perhaps, or simply calculation. His grip on the gun tightened. "I'm sorry it came to this, Victoria. Truly." As he raised the gun, several things happened at once. Jessica bolted from the room. Margaret lunged toward Victoria. And Alex threw himself at Richard. The gun went off with a deafening crack. Grappling with Richard, Richard's manicured hands closed around Alex's throat. "You should have stayed in your lane, Donovan," he hissed. "Poverty suited you." Black spots danced in Alex's vision as Richard squeezed. With his wounded shoulder, Alex couldn't break the grip. Just as consciousness began to fade, the pressure suddenly released. Victoria stood over them, the heavy crystal award from Richard's desk clutched in her small hands. Richard lay stunned beside Alex, a gash on his temple oozing blood. "Alex!" Victoria dropped to her knees beside him. "You're bleeding!" "Just a graze," Alex managed, though fire lanced through his shoulder. "We need to go. Now!" Margaret helped him to his feet, while Victoria kept a wary eye on her unconscious uncle. "The FBI will be here any minute," Margaret assured them. "We should wait." "No," Alex interrupted, pressing his hand against his bleeding shoulder. "Richard's security men will be back first. We need to get Victoria somewhere safe." Detest, as if summoned by his words, the office door flew open. Alex tensed, expecting the security guards. Instead, Agent Diana Reynolds stood there, flanked by 2 FBI agents with weapons drawn. "Federal agents," she announced. "Nobody move." Jessica appeared behind them, breathless. "I found them in the lobby." Agent Reynolds took in the scene. Alex bleeding, Richard unconscious, Victoria still gripping the crystal award. "Victoria Blackwood?" she asked gently. Victoria nodded, her eyes never leaving Alex. "Your mother was my friend," Agent Reynolds said. "I'm here to help." Within minutes, the office swarmed with federal agents. Paramedics tended to Alex's shoulder wound, a bullet graze that looked worse than it was. Richard Blackwood was handcuffed and led away, still dazed from Victoria's blow. As a female agent took Victoria's statement, Alex found himself face to face with Agent Reynolds. "You took an enormous risk," she said. Her tone somewhere between admiration and exasperation. "Richard Blackwood is one of the most powerful men in the country." "Was," Alex corrected, wincing as the paramedic cleaned his wound. Reynolds nodded. "The evidence you recovered, plus the recording of him essentially confessing to attempted murder just now, he's finished." "What happens to Victoria now?" Alex asked, watching the girl across the room. Despite everything, she sat poised and composed, answering questions with quiet dignity. "That's complicated," Reynolds admitted. "With her parents dead and her guardian arrested for their murder, she'll need a court-appointed guardian until the probate court sorts out her inheritance." "Foster care," Alex said flatly. "Most likely," Reynolds agreed, "unless there's a family member who can step forward." Later, as they left Blackwood Tower, Victoria now officially in FBI protective custody, Alex found himself struggling with an unexpected sense of loss. It was over. Victoria was safe. Richard would face justice. So why did he feel so hollow? "They're taking me to a safe house," Victoria told him on the sidewalk outside, an FBI agent hovering nearby. "Agent Reynolds says I have to testify against Uncle Richard." "You'll be amazing," Alex assured her, forcing a smile. "You're the bravest person I've ever met, Victoria Blackwood." Victoria's composure finally cracked. Tears filled her green eyes. "Will I see you again?" Before Alex could answer, Agent Reynolds approached. "We need to go." "Victoria." As Victoria was led toward a waiting SUV, she suddenly pulled away and ran back to Alex, throwing her arms around him. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered, when nobody else did. Then she was gone, swept away in a procession of government vehicles, leaving Alex standing on the sidewalk with an ache in his shoulder and an emptiness in his chest that had nothing to do with his wound. Jessica appeared beside him. "You okay?" "Yeah," he lied. "It's over. She's safe." "What will you do now?" Alex shook his head. "No idea. Find a job, rebuild." Jessica hesitated, then kissed his cheek. "You're a good man, Alex Donovan, better than I gave you credit for." 3 days later, Alex sat in his apartment surrounded by boxes. The landlord had given him until the end of the week to vacate. His savings depleted, he could no longer afford the rent. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd helped recover a $30 billion fortune and was now essentially homeless. His phone rang. An unknown number. "Mr. Donovan? This is Patricia Winters, from the law firm of Winters, Goldberg and Shaw. We represent the Blackwood estate." The woman's voice was brisk, professional. "Ms. Victoria Blackwood has made a rather unusual request, and we need to discuss it with you urgently." Alex felt painfully out of place in his worn suit and scuffed shoes as he was escorted through a reception area that probably cost more than he'd ever earned in his life. Patricia Winters was a formidable woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes that assessed Alex with laser-like precision. "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Mr. Donovan." "Is Victoria okay?" Alex asked immediately. A hint of approval flickered across Winters' face. "She's as well as can be expected, given the circumstances. She's currently with a court-appointed guardian at a location we're keeping confidential for her safety, Richard's associates. Some remain at large, yes. But that's not why I asked you here." Winters gestured to a chair. "Please sit." She opened a folder on her immaculate desk. "The Blackwood estate is one of the most complex we've ever handled. Victoria stands to inherit controlling interest in Blackwood Industries when she turns 21. Currently valued at approximately $32 billion. Until then, her affairs are managed by a trust." Alex shifted uncomfortably. "What does this have to do with me?" "Everything." Winters fixed him with a penetrating stare. "Eleanor Blackwood's will contained an unusual provision. In the event both she and Charles died before Victoria reached majority, and if Richard was unable or deemed unsuitable to serve as guardian, Eleanor left instructions regarding an alternative." "Another family member?" "No. Eleanor specified that guardianship should be assigned to, and I quote, "a person of moral character who demonstrates selfless concern for Victoria's welfare above all financial considerations." Alex frowned. "That's oddly specific." "Indeed. The court typically appoints family members as guardians. But given the circumstances, the judge is willing to consider Eleanor's wishes." Winters leaned forward. "Victoria has requested that you be considered for this role." Alex stared at her, certain he'd misheard. "Me? I'm not qualified. I don't have a job. I'm being evicted from my apartment." "Qualification for guardianship isn't based on wealth, Mr. Donovan, but on character. You risked your life to protect a child you barely knew. With no expectation of reward. Anyone would have done the same," Alex protested. "No," Winters said flatly. "They wouldn't. Most people would have called social services the moment they found a homeless child. You saw Victoria, really saw her, when she was at her most vulnerable." Alex sat back, overwhelmed. "This is a lot to process." "Of course, take some time to think about it." Winters handed him a business card. "Victoria's trust includes provisions for her guardian's living expenses and a modest stipend. Nothing extravagant, but enough to ensure her caretaker can focus on her well-being." As Alex left the office, his mind reeled with implications. Him, guardian to one of the wealthiest children in America? It was absurd. He had no experience with children, no stable income. No. His phone buzzed with a text from Agent Reynolds. Victoria asking about you daily. Would you consider visiting? It would mean the world to her. Attached was a photo of Victoria in what looked like a comfortable apartment, smiling tentatively at the camera. Around her neck hung the silver key, her mother's last gift, now a symbol of justice and truth. On the street outside, Alex found himself walking aimlessly, processing everything. The sensible answer was clear. He should decline the guardianship. Victoria needed stability, expertise, resources he couldn't provide. Then again, she also needed someone who saw her for who she was, not what she was worth. Alex's phone rang again, Margaret Walsh this time. They've offered you guardianship, haven't they? She asked without preamble. How did you know? Because I suggested it, Margaret replied. I worked with Eleanor for 15 years. I know exactly what she meant by that clause in her will. She wanted someone who would love Victoria for herself, not her inheritance. But I barely know her, Alex protested. You know her better than you think, Margaret countered. You saw past the dirt and defenses to the child beneath. That's more than most people in her life ever did. As the sun set over Manhattan, Alex found himself outside First Federal Bank on Madison Avenue, where this wild journey had truly begun. Through the window, he could see the marble floors where Victoria had stood so bravely, claiming her birthright. His phone buzzed once more. Meredith Chen, from Child Services. Alex, I just heard about the Blackwood guardianship petition, she said. Are you going to accept? I don't know, he admitted. It's crazy, right? Me, raising a child? Meredith was quiet for a moment. When I saw you with her that first day, you know what struck me? How you listened to her, really listened, like her words mattered. Do you know how rare that is? She's an extraordinary kid. Yes, she is, Meredith agreed. And she chose you, Alex. That says something important. As darkness fell over the city, Alex made his decision. There would be challenges, certainly. The media frenzy alone would be brutal. But Victoria had faced down a murderer for the truth. Surely he could face whatever came next. He texted Agent Reynolds. When can I see her? The reply came immediately. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. She'll be so happy. For the first time since Harrison and Blackwell collapsed and his world fell apart, Alex felt something he'd almost forgotten. Purpose. And perhaps, just perhaps, the beginning of a different kind of wealth than the one he'd lost. Watching Victoria feed the ducks by the pond, her dark hair, now neatly trimmed, caught the sunlight as she laughed. A sound that had become more frequent but remained precious. The court proceedings had been lengthy, the media coverage relentless. Billionaire orphan and broke hero, screamed the tabloid headlines. Richard Blackwood had pleaded not guilty, but the evidence was overwhelming. With Margaret Walsh's testimony and Victoria's courageous appearance in court, his conviction was all but assured. We're being watched, Victoria said casually as she returned to the bench, brushing breadcrumbs from her hands. Alex nodded toward the discreet security detail at the park entrance, a necessary precaution until Richard's trial concluded. They're just doing their job. Not them, Victoria said, with a hint of her old wariness. The woman by the maple tree. She's been following us since we left the apartment. Alex glanced over to see a familiar figure. That's Jessica. Victoria's shoulders relaxed slightly. Your ex-fiancée? She's been texting, wanting to talk. Alex hesitated. Would it be okay if she joined us for a minute? Victoria considered this, then nodded with the solemn gravity that sometimes made her seem far older than 9. Jessica approached cautiously, her eyes taking in the changes in Alex, the new confidence in his posture, the easy way he sat beside Victoria. Hi, she said, uncertain for perhaps the first time since Alex had known her. I hope I'm not interrupting. We're just feeding ducks, Victoria replied. Studying Jessica with the same careful assessment she applied to everyone who entered their orbit. You look good, Alex, Jessica said. Both of you do. It was true. The modest townhouse provided by Victoria's trust had given them stability. Alex had enrolled in courses to better understand child development and trauma recovery. Victoria had started at a private school with excellent security and a no-media policy that protected her privacy. Thanks for helping with the college fund fundraiser, Alex said. The charity he'd established to help underprivileged children had been Jessica's idea, a way to honor what Victoria had endured while helping others. It was nothing. Jessica shrugged. The financial world still feels guilty about Harrison and Blackwell. They'll be writing checks for years. Victoria, who had been watching a family of ducks glide across the water, suddenly asked, "Do you regret it? Leaving Alex when he lost his money?" "Victoria," Alex admonished gently, "that's a personal question." "It's okay," Jessica said, her smile tinged with sadness. "Yes, I do regret it. Very much." Victoria nodded, seemingly satisfied. "People make mistakes. My mother always said it's what you do after that matters." Jessica blinked rapidly, then looked at her watch. "I should go. I have a meeting." She hesitated. "It was good seeing you both." After she left, Victoria asked, "Are you going to get back together with her?" Alex smiled at her directness. "No, that chapter's closed." Victoria seemed relieved. "Good. She's nice, but she doesn't see you." "Not really." It was one of those moments that reminded Alex of the extraordinary perceptiveness behind those green eyes that sometimes seemed to contain all the wisdom and sorrow of someone who had lived a much longer life. As they walked home, Victoria slipped her small hand into his, a gesture that had once been rare but now came naturally. Their path forward wasn't easy. Victoria still had nightmares. The media still camped outside their home occasionally. The responsibility of raising a child, especially one with Victoria's history and future, sometimes overwhelmed Alex. But they were figuring it out day by day. That evening, as Alex tucked Victoria into bed, she asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. "What happens after Uncle Richard goes to jail? Will I have to run Blackwood Industries when I grow up?" "That's entirely your choice," Alex told her. "Your parents' legacy is yours to shape however you want." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about changing the company name. Blackwood doesn't feel right anymore." "Oh, what were you thinking?" She fingered the silver key that still hung around her neck. "Donovan Industries has a nice ring to it." Alex's throat tightened unexpectedly. "Victoria, you don't have to—" "I know," she interrupted, "but I want to. You're my family now." Those simple words, the thing Alex had never expected to hear again after losing everything, filled a space in his heart he hadn't realized was empty. 1 year to the day after Alex had found Victoria huddled in that rainy alley, they stood together on the steps of the courthouse. Richard Blackwood had been sentenced to life imprisonment for the murders of Charles and Eleanor Blackwood, along with additional charges of fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. "How do you feel?" Agent Reynolds asked Victoria as reporters shouted questions from behind security barriers. Victoria considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness. "Like I can finally start living instead of just surviving." Later that night, Alex found Victoria sitting on the window seat in their living room, gazing out at the city lights. The silver key rested in her palm, catching the lamplight. "I don't need this anymore," she said. Holding it up, "The safe deposit box is empty. The truth is out." Alex sat beside her. "What will you do with it?" Victoria closed her fingers around the key. "Keep it. To remember that sometimes the most valuable things aren't what's in the box, but who helps you open it." Alex smiled at her wisdom. "Your parents would be incredibly proud of you." Victoria. "I know," she said with quiet certainty. Then, after a moment's hesitation, "I've been thinking, Would it be okay if people called me Lily again, just at school and with friends? Lily? Alex was surprised. I thought that was just a name you used when you were hiding. Victoria Lily shook her head. It was my mother's nickname for me, because I was her little flower. She looked up at him, suddenly vulnerable. Victoria is the heiress everyone wants something from. Lily is just me. Then Lily it is, Alex agreed softly. But you know what? Whether you're Victoria Blackwood or Lily Donovan, you're the bravest, smartest, most extraordinary person I've ever met. Lily leaned against him, a child again, despite all she had endured. Do you think people will still talk about us? The millionaire and the little beggar girl? Alex put his arm around her shoulders. Probably. People love those kinds of stories. They all laughed, didn't they, when you took me in? Some did, Alex admitted. They thought I was crazy. Lily smiled, that rare, brilliant smile that transformed her serious face. They're not laughing now. Outside, the Manhattan skyline glittered with promise. Inside, a man who had lost everything and a girl who had inherited more than anyone could spend in a lifetime had found the one thing neither could buy: a family. And somewhere, Alex liked to think, Eleanor and Charles Blackwood were at peace, knowing their daughter was finally home. The NDF.